In the heart of a forgotten winter, where the snow cradled secrets like a lover's unspoken vow, the Alpha King knelt in the endless white, his breath forming ghosts in the air. Elias Thorne, the Alpha King of the Silverfang Pack, was a figure forged in the fires of ancient curses and unyielding solitude. At over 3 centuries old, though his form appeared no older than 35, he bore the weight of immortality like a crown of thorns. Born in the shadowed moors of 18th century Scotland to a line of werewolf alphas who had long warred with the encroaching human world, Elias had watched empires rise and crumble. His transformation came not by bite or ritual, but by a pact with the moon's cruel mercy during a brutal clan battle, sparing him death, but binding him to an eternal vigilance over his pack. Traumas etched deep. The loss of his first mate to silver-laced arrows in a hunter's raid, the betrayal by his own beta who sought power through forbidden alliances, and the endless guilt of outliving every soul he had sworn to protect. His desires, a redemption he scarcely believed in, a connection that could thaw the ice around his heart without dooming another to his shadowed fate. Ethical to his core, Elias enforced pack laws with a fairness that bordered on torment, his solitude a self-imposed exile in the crumbling castle ruins atop Blackthorn Hill. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the ancient pines that flanked the castle's outer walls. Elias's boots crunched through the crust, his heightened senses picking up the faint metallic tang of blood beneath the purity. He had come here alone, fleeing the pack's restless murmurs in the great hall below. The full moon hung low, a silver medallion mocking his unrest. His gloved hand brushed against something unnatural, a folded parchment, half buried, its edges curled like frozen petals. He drew it free, the paper brittle under his touch, stained with irregular dark spots that smeared like ink from a quill dipped in sorrow. Unfolding it revealed words scrawled in a hurried, elegant hand. To the one who walks the edge of night, forgive me for what I leave behind. The pack's shadow grows long, and I cannot bear its chill any longer. Your strength is my curse, for it reminds me of what I can never be. Follow if you dare, but know the path leads only to tears. No signature, only those tear-like stains, crystallized now in the frost. Elias's chest tightened, a low growl rumbling from his throat. Who could have penned this? A rogue from his pack? An outsider drawn to the legends of the Alpha's domain? The air grew thick with the scent of salt and desperation, human tears, fresh enough to pierce his immortal senses. He rose, the letter clutched in his fist, and scanned the horizon. The castle loomed behind him, its gargoyles leering through veils of mist, candles flickering in arched windows like distant stars. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying echoes of distant howls. Elias's mind raced with philosophical shadows. Immortality was no gift, but a mirror reflecting the fragility of those he could not save. Every immortal was once someone who chose not to die, yet what choice had he truly made? The pack needed him whole, but this letter stirred something primal, a pull toward the unknown that felt like fate's inexorable thread. Deeper into the woods he ventured, the snow swallowing his steps. The trees parted to reveal a frozen stream, its surface a glassy veil over secrets below. There, huddled against a boulder, was a woman. Mortal, frail, her dark hair matted with ice, her cloak threadbare against the bite. She was Ilara Voss, 28 years old, a herbalist from the nearby village of Eldridge Hollow, orphaned young by a plague that claimed her family and left her scarred with chronic illness, a wasting fever that sapped her strength, leaving her disillusioned with a world that offered no mercy. Abandoned by lovers who feared her fragility, Ilara sought solace in the wilds, gathering rare blooms for elixirs that prolonged her days but never healed her soul. Her deepest desire, to feel truly seen, not as a burden, but as a flame worth shielding from the storm. Broken and disiludida, she had wandered too far, driven by whispers of a hidden spring, said to cure the incurable. Elias approached slowly, his presence a shadow among shadows. She stirred, her eyes, storm-gray and luminous, meeting his with a defiance that belied her pallor. "Stay back," she rasped, her voice a thread of silk over gravel. "I've no strength left for ghosts." He knelt at a distance, the letter burning in his pocket. "You're no ghost, though you court death like an old friend." His tone was measured, laced with the compassion of one who knew loss intimately. The wind tugged at her hood, revealing a faint scar along her collarbone, a mark from a childhood fever dream she never spoke of. In his mind, an elemental symbol took root, a single silver locket half buried in the snow beside her, its chain broken, engraved with a crescent moon that mirrored his own curse. As flakes danced around them, Elias extended a hand, not to claim, but to offer. The air hummed with unspoken tension, the clash of mortal fragility and immortal restraint. Alara's gaze lingered on him, rationalizing the pull as delirium, yet inevitable as the tide. The death that shadowed her life now stood embodied before her, cloaked in fur-lined leather and eyes like polished obsidian. What choice would the night demand? But as he reached for the locket, a distant howl pierced the silence. Not from his pack, but something older, hungrier. Ilara's hand trembled toward his, and in that moment, the snow seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the fracture that would bind them. The forest exhaled as Elias's fingers brushed the silver locket, its cold metal warming unnaturally in his grasp, as if it recognized the touch of eternity. Ilara watched him warily, her body racked by shivers that had little to do with the chill. The fever burned within her, a constant companion since childhood, twisting her dreams into nightmares of abandonment. Born in the soot-choked alleys of Eldridge Hollow to a healer mother and a blacksmith father, she had inherited her mother's gift for herbs, but none of the resilience. The plague of her 10th year stole her parents, leaving her to fend in a village that pitied but never embraced. Lovers came and went, repelled by her spells of weakness, her skin pallid as moonlight. Desires warred in her. To heal the unhealable, to be desired not despite her brokenness, but because of it. Now, facing this stranger, this man whose presence filled the glade like a gathering storm, she felt the rational edges of her fear fray. Elias opened the locket with deliberate care, revealing a faded miniature portrait, a woman with Alara's eyes, her mother's face, and on the reverse, a lock of auburn hair. "This is yours?" he asked, his voice a low timbre that resonated like distant thunder. The snow around them glittered under the moon's gaze, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters on the bark. She nodded, drawing her knees closer. "It was, snapped in a fall, much like me." Her words carried the weight of philosophy unspoken. Mortality as a chain, fragile and fleeting. The wind carried the scent of pine resin and her own faint herbal aura, lavender and wilted rose, mingling with the earthy musk of his immortal form. He returned the locket, their fingers grazing. A spark, not of magic, but of raw connection, jolted through him. Elias had resisted such pulls for centuries, rationalizing them as echoes of his lost mate. Guilt clawed at him. He was the alpha, sworn to protect, not to entangle the vulnerable in his cursed web. Yet the letter in his pocket whispered of fates intertwined. "The note I found. Did you write it?" Alara's eyes widened, denial flickering before truth spilled. Yes, in delirium, thinking of the old tales, the alpha who saves the lost. But I'm no damsel, just a fool who strayed." Her breath came in shallow bursts, the fever painting her cheeks with feverish red against the white of snow. He helped her to her feet, his arms steady around her waist. Support, not possession. The castle's lights beckoned through the trees, warm glows against the velvet black sky. As they walked, The crunch of snow underfoot mingled with her labored breaths, a somber rhythm. Inside the great hall, firelight played across tapestried walls depicting ancient hunts, the air thick with the scent of beeswax candles and roasting venison. His pack, shadowy figures in the corners, watched with wary eyes, their loyalty to Elias absolute but tinged with fear of outsiders. Alara sank into a velvet armchair by the hearth, the flame's warmth a balm on her skin. Elias poured mulled wine, its steam rising like incantations. Rest here. The night is not kind to the weary. Introspection gripped him as he watched her sip. Love, if it dared bloom, would be both salvation and damnation, offering her life through his blood's ancient power, yet cursing her to his endless night. She traced the locket's chain, now repaired in his deft hands. Why help a stranger? What's your stake in the shadows? His gaze met hers, the fire reflecting in his eyes like captured stars. Because every soul carries a light worth preserving, even if it means facing the dark within. The element of the locket pulsed subtly, a recurring symbol of lost connections, its crescent moon a reminder of choices deferred. As the hour deepened, a revelation stirred. Alara confessed the letter's deeper intent, not suicide, but a plea for the spring's myth, a desperate ritual to choose life over her wasting death. Elias's heart twisted. He knew of no such spring, only the forbidden rite of his blood that could transform but never without cost. The air grew heavy with the patter of rain on stone sills, washing away the snow's illusions. Yet as she drifted toward sleep, a shadow detached from the hall's edge, a Dhampir woman, half-vampire kin to ancient rivals, her eyes gleaming with unspoken claim on Elias. Lyrian, ethereal and fierce, had loved him once in the shadows of guilt-ridden nights, her immortality a bridge between worlds. Her presence ignited jealousy in the air, a choice looming, loyalty to the past or the fragile now. Alara stirred, sensing the tension, her hand instinctively reaching for the locket. The night held its breath, the fire crackling like a warning. The rain transformed the snow into a treacherous mire, each drop a tear from the heavens, as Elias led Alara toward the hidden glen where legends of the eternal spring lingered. Lyrian's silhouette faded into the castle's corridors, her departure a silent accusation that hung in Elias's mind like smoke. She was a Dhampir of timeless grace, born in the 17th century Carpathians to a vampire sire and human mother, her existence a perpetual dance between bloodlust and restraint. At apparent eternal 25, Lyrian carried traumas of rejection, shunned by full vampires for her tainted blood, pitied by humans for her predatory nature. Her desire for Elias stemmed from a redemptive love, one that had once tempted him toward eternity's shared burden, but guilt had severed it. Ethical in her solitude, she wandered as a guardian of forgotten lore, her presence now a reminder of choices that echoed through immortality. Alara leaned on Elias as they traversed the glen, the path slick with mud that clung like regret. The air smelled of wet earth and blooming nightshade, textures rough against their skin. Her fever raged, each step a philosophical meditation on suffering's beauty, the human ache that immortals envied. "This spring," she murmured, "they say it chooses who drinks, life or oblivion. What would you pick if death finally called your name?" Elias's jaw tightened, the locket now around her neck swaying like a pendulum. "I've danced too long with death to trust its gifts. Immortality is memory's cage, every loss etched eternal." His voice wove introspection with the sensory, the rain's chill on his face, the distant rumble of thunder like a pack's warning growl. They reached the glen's heart, a circle of ancient oaks framing a pool fed by an underground vein. Moonlight pierced the canopy, turning the water to liquid silver. Candelabros of natural stone held bioluminescent fungi, their glow soft and otherworldly. Alara knelt at the edge, dipping trembling fingers into the chill. It was no myth. The water hummed with latent power, a ritual site from his pack's oldest lore, where alphas once renewed vows to the moon. But as she cupped the water to her lips, a vision assailed her. Flashes of Elias's past, battles under blood moons, his mate's dying breath, the guilt that solitary nights amplified. She recoiled, splashing the pool. "It's poisoned with sorrow. Yours." He pulled her back, their bodies close in the downpour, rain mingling with her tears. The intimacy was resisted, her mind screaming rationality, his ethics demanding distance, yet inevitable, a gravitational pull. Death hovered, invisible, in the fever's grip, urging her toward the water's false promise. In that moment of revelation, Elara chose, not the spring, but confession. The letter wasn't escape, it was a call. To you. I've heard the tales, Alpha. Your touch could end this illness, or begin something worse. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and her warming skin, the locket glowing faintly against her chest. Elias's resolve cracked, a low whisper escaping. To share my blood is to offer eternity's curse. Love redeems, but at what shadow's cost? Their eyes locked, the rain a curtain around their world, textures of wet wool and heated breath intertwining. The glen fell silent, save for the water's lap, but a rustle in the underbrush shattered the peace, Lyrian emerging, her Dhampir eyes crimson with restrained hunger. She seeks what was mine, Elias. Will you damn her as you spared me? Elara's hand flew to the locket, the symbol now a talisman of impending fracture. The choice loomed. Reveal the ritual's truth, or let jealousy claim the night. As thunder rolled, Elara whispered, "Tell me, am I just another ghost in your endless winter?" And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these immortal confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. Crimson threads wove through the clouds as the blood moon rose, painting the glen's waters in hues of forbidden desire, where choices bled into destiny. Lyrian's words hung like venom in the air, her form poised between ally and adversary, the rain sluicing down her pale skin like tears of the damned. Elara clutched the locket, its crescent moon now seeming to pulse with Elias's heartbeat, distant, eternal, a recurring emblem of bonds that transcended mortality. The fever clawed deeper into her, visions of abandonment flashing, empty village hearths, lovers' cold shoulders. Yet here, in this immortal's shadow, she glimpsed redemption's flicker. Elias stepped between them, his frame a barrier of restrained power. Lyrian, this is no rivalry. Elara seeks life, not the throne of my regrets. His ethics shone through, solitary guilt etching lines on his face that centuries hadn't touched. The pack's lore bound him. Alphas did not turn mortals lightly, for each transformation echoed the choice not to die. A burden doubled in shared eternity. The Dhampir laughed softly, a sound like shattering crystal, echoing off the oaks. Regrets. You speak of mine as if they were yours alone. I chose this half-life for you, Elias, wandering ruins and mists, guarding secrets like this spring. Her traumas surfaced in her gaze. The sire who abandoned her to human hunters, the human mother slain for birthing a monster. Desire lingered, a romantic tether to the alpha who had once offered solace without claim. Elara rose unsteadily, the mud sucking at her boots, textures gritty and unyielding. I'm no prize to contest, just a woman staring down death's maw. Her voice carried philosophical depth, the beauty of suffering in her weary eyes, human fragility as the ultimate light in immortal shadows. They retreated to the castle as the storm broke, the great hall's fires roaring against the ingress of damp. Candles guttered in iron sconces, casting golden pools on velvet drapes of deep crimson and black. The scent of smoldering oak mingled with Lyrian's faint metallic aura, a sensory tapestry of tension. Elias guided Alara to a chamber high in the turret, its windows framing the blood moon's glow, ancient tapestries depicting lunar rites, whispering forgotten incantations. Alone with her, he tended her fever with herbal poultices, ironic, given his own transformative blood. Introspection gripped him. Love resisted, rationalized as duty, yet blooming inevitable in her quiet strength. "The ritual you seek," he began, his breath slow against her ear, "is no simple draft. My blood would heal, remake you, Dhampir perhaps, bound tonight but free of decay. But the cost, eternity's loneliness, the hunger that twists the soul." She touched the locket, fingers tracing its engravings. "And if I choose it for us? Not just survival, but a shared shadow." The air hummed with intimacy, the moon's light filtering through leaded glass, illuminating her scar like a badge of endured pain. A revelation unfolded in the quiet. Elias revealed his origins pact, the moon's bargain that saved him but cursed his line to guard against darker immortals, vampire covens encroaching from the east. Lyrian's arrival was no coincidence. She bore warnings of a ritual to exploit the spring, turning its waters to poison for werewolf kind. As dawn's first gray threatened, Ilara's hand found his, a choice teetering, accept the blood's offer or face the fever's end alone. But footsteps echoed in the hall, pack scouts breathless with news of intruders at the borders. Lyrian's eyes met Elias's through the door's crack, her expression a mix of plea and betrayal. The locket warmed against Ilara's skin, symbol of fractures widening. Would the night claim her before the dawn could heal? The blood moon waned into a sickle of silver, slicing the horizon as if to draw first blood from the fates entwined below. Intruders' howls, vampiric, laced with malice, echoed from the borders, pulling Elias from the turret with a predator's urgency. Alara followed at a distance, the locket's weight an anchor against her dizziness, its crescent now seeming to etch itself into her palm. The castle stirred, pack members arming with silver-tipped blades, the air thick with the tang of oiled steel and fear sweat. Textures assaulted, rough wool of cloaks, the slick stone underfoot, candle flames flickering like anxious breaths. Lyrian joined them in the armory, her Dhampir agility a blur as she selected a dagger etched with runes. The coven seeks the spring's heart, a crystal vein beneath, said to amplify blood rights. If they corrupt it, your pack falls, Elias, and her. She nodded to Ilara, eyes narrowing with reluctant concern. Ilara's illness flared, but determination burned brighter. Disilluted no more, she saw in this chaos a purpose, the human spark that immortals craved. Then we stop them. I'm no burden. I've brewed poisons deadlier than their fangs. Her traumas fueled her, years of being cast aside, now transmuted into resolve. Elias's gaze lingered on her, resistance crumbling. Ethical solitude warred with the inevitable pull. Love as redemption, a curse that promised transformation. They ventured into the night, the group a shadowed phalanx through mist-shrouded paths. The glen awaited, its pool now roiling under the moon's pallid light, sounds of chanting drifting like fog, low, guttural invocations in an ancient tongue. Close-ups in the mind's eye, Elias's face etched with guilt from centuries of lost battles. Ilara's hands, trembling yet steady on a vial of nightshade extract. Lyrian's lips, curved in a tragic smile, her redemptive arc circling back to the alpha she couldn't release. Ambush struck near the oaks, vampires materializing from the dark, their skin pale as frost, eyes burning ruby. Fangs gleamed, the scent of cold blood heavy. Elias shifted partially, claws extending. A whirlwind of fur and fury. Lyrian danced among them, her Dhampir speed a lethal grace, while Elara hurled her elixir, the liquid sizzling on undead flesh like acid rain. In the fray, a revelation pierced. One vampire, an elder with scars mirroring Elias's, hissed, "The letter was bait, Wolf King, to draw you here, where the Dhampir's heart breaks anew." Lyrian faltered, a wound blooming on her side, poisoned, her immortality tested. Elara reached the pool's edge, the water's glow revealing the crystal vein below, pulsing like a heart. The ritual demanded choice: shatter it and doom the spring's myth, or infuse it with blood for purification, a rebirth that could heal her, bind her to Elias, but risk Lyrian's final redemption. As claws raked Elias's arm, drawing immortal blood that steamed in the cold, Elara dipped the locket into the pool, tears falling to mingle. "For the light in shadows," she whispered. The water surged, a wave of silver light repelling the coven. But Lyrian collapsed, her eyes on Elias. "Choose her, or remember me in eternity." The locket, now radiant, hung between them, a symbol of divided souls. Dawn crept. The battle's echoes fading, but Elara's fever peaked, forcing the ultimate dilemma: drink from the transformed waters, or let mortality claim its due. Silver light from the pool cascaded like liquid mercy, illuminating fractures in the night where loyalties bled into one another. Lyrian's form slumped against an oak, her wound seeping dark essence, the Dhampir's resilience fraying under the poison's grip. Elias knelt beside her, his hand pressing cloth to the gash, guilt a familiar specter. "Hold, old shadow. The pack owes you this dawn." His voice, compassionate yet somber, wove through the glen's hush, now broken only by the pool's gentle lap and distant raven calls. Elara stood transfixed, the locket dripping luminous droplets onto her skin, warming her fevered veins. The water's transformation, infused by her tears and the symbol's ancient resonance, offered a crossroads: sip and embrace partial immortality, a Dhampir's dawn with Elias, or refuse and fade into human oblivion. Philosophy swirled in her mind. The beauty of suffering lay in its finitude, yet love's redemption whispered of eternities shared, curses borne together. The coven remnants fled into the mist, their chants silenced, leaving behind shattered runes that crunched underfoot like brittle bones. Textures enveloped, the velvet damp of moss, the metallic bite of blood in the air, candle-like glows from the pool reflecting in wide, ancient windows of the nearby ruin, a forgotten chapel adjoining the glen. Lyrian's eyes, dimming, met Elara's. "Foolish mortal, he resisted me for centuries. What makes you think you'll escape the shadow?" Her words carried no malice, only the tragedy of unrequited redemption, her desires for Elias a solitary flame, marked by guilt over past temptations that nearly doomed his pack. Elias rose, turning to Elara, the blood moon's last gleam tracing his features. "The water calls to you now, my blood within it, mingled with your will. Choose life as Dhampir, stronger, eternal, but know the hunger, the isolation." Intimacy bloomed in the space between, resisted no longer. Her hand in his felt inevitable, a sensual pull without vulgarity, like silk against stone. She knelt at the pool, the surface rippling with visions, her mother's smile, abandoned hearths, and Elias's solitary watches under countless moons. The death that had shadowed her life now receded, invisible yet present, as she lifted water to her lips. It tasted of iron and wild honey, burning through her like fire's embrace. Transformation seized her, veins aglow, strength surging, the fever shattering like ice. She gasped, eyes opening to a world sharpened, sense intensified, the moon's pull a distant song. Dhampir now, half-mortal light in immortal shadow, bound to Elias not by force, but choice. Lyrian stirred, the light spillover mending her wound, a redemptive twist. "You've shared the curse," she murmured, rising with weary grace. "Guard it well." As the group returned to the castle, the chapel's bells tolled phantom chimes, wind carrying the texture of turning leaves. Introspection settled. Every immortal was once someone who chose not to die, and Alara's rebirth echoed that truth, love as both salvation and the weight of forever. Yet in the great hall, a new shadow loomed, a sealed missive from the Coven's elder, promising vengeance woven with the locket's twin symbol. Alara's hand tightened on Elias's, the dilemma ethical. Pursue peace or prepare for war's eternal cycle? If this story has already captured you, leave a like. It helps the voices of those who chose eternity reach more hearts. Phantom bells tolled through the chapel's cracked arches, their resonance a dirge for choices that lingered like incense in the air. The castle's halls felt charged in the aftermath, pack members murmuring in clusters, their eyes on Alara with a mix of awe and suspicion. Her transformation hummed within, Dhampir senses awakening to the subtle symphony, the creak of settling stones, the faint pulse of hearts in distant rooms, the earthy undertone of Elias's presence beside her. The locket rested cool against her chest, its crescent now a dual emblem, hers and his, symbol of their intertwined fates. Elias led her to the chapel ruins adjoining the grounds, a Gothic sanctuary of weathered gargoyles and stained glass fractured by time. Rain from earlier had ceased, leaving puddles that mirrored the overcast sky, colors muted in grays and faded golds. Candelabros, long cold, stood sentinel, their wax drippings like frozen tears. The air carried the scent of aged stone and wild roses creeping through fissures, textures rough and intimate, inviting touch. "You feel it now," Elias said, his voice a low cadence, guiding her hand to a cracked altar. The world's edges sharpened, but the shadows deeper. His traumas resurfaced in quiet confession. The night he chose immortality, watching his clan perish, guilt etching his solitude. Ethical to the end, he had resisted turning others, fearing the curse's spread, until her. Alara traced the altar's carvings, lunar phases mirroring the locket. Her own past echoed, the plague's isolation, lovers' abandonments rationalized as mercy. Now, as Dhampir, desire bloomed inevitable, love's redemption in his steady gaze, a sensual undercurrent like velvet night against skin. "It's not curse or gift," she replied, philosophical depth in her tone. "Just another form of suffering's beauty. We choose it together." Lyrian appeared at the threshold, her form healed but spirit weary, a bottle of ancient wine in hand. The missive warns of a convergence, coven and pack rites under the next eclipse. The locket's twin is their key, hidden in these ruins. Her redemptive arc softened, no longer rival but ally, her guilt over past loves yielding to shared purpose. They searched the chapel, light filtering through glass in shards of crimson and indigo, sounds of scraping stone and whispered breaths building suspense. Introspection wove through action. Elias pondered memory's tyranny, Alara, the faith in transcendence. Revelation came in the crypt below, a hidden alcove revealing the twin locket, chained to a rose-dried relic, its petals brittle as forgotten vows. Touching it triggered a vision, the Coven's elder, once Elias's ally in a long-ago truce, betrayed by ambition, now seeking to shatter all bonds. Alara donned the twin, the pair linking like heartbeats. "This unites us, or unmakes everything." The choice crystallized: use the lockets in a counter-ritual for peace, or wield them as weapons in war. As dusk fell, footsteps echoed outside, scouts reporting Coven's approach. Lyrian's eyes met Alara's, a silent pact. The chapel's bells rang true this time, a call to arms. But in Elias's embrace, Alara felt the ethical dilemma. Fight for eternity's light, or let love's curse consume the dawn. The eclipse devoured the sun in a corona of fire and void, casting the chapel in twilight's eternal hush, where bonds forged in shadow trembled on the precipice of unmaking. Every flicker of returning light, a cruel tease of what might yet be saved. In the chapel's vaulted nave, the air hung heavy with the scent of damp stone and smoldering herbs from a hastily lit brazier, its flames casting elongated shadows that clawed at the walls like desperate fingers. Elias positioned himself at the threshold, his broad frame a sentinel of restrained fury. The twin lockets now joined around Alara's neck, pulsing in unison, a recurring symbol of unity's fragility, their silver surfaces etched with faint runes that seemed to writhe under the eclipse's pallid glow. The textures pressed in, the rough-hewn grit of the stone floor beneath his boots, the velvet weight of his cloak against his skin, and the subtle, electric hum of the air as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Pack warriors gathered behind him, their forms half-shifted into lupine menace, fur rippling along human limbs, eyes gleaming with the wild gold of loyalty tested. Low growls rumbled through the group, mingling with the distant chant of the approaching coven, a guttural symphony that vibrated in the chest like an approaching storm. Alara stood at his side, her Dhampir senses newly attuned to the world's sharpened edges. The faint, metallic tang of fear sweat from the pack, the slow drip of residual rain from the chapel's eaves pattering like hesitant heartbeats, and the intimate warmth radiating from Elias's body, stirring an inevitable pull that she had long rationalized as mere survival instinct. Now, in this moment of impending chaos, it bloomed into something deeper, a sensual undercurrent, mature and unhurried, like the slow unfurling of night-blooming jasmine against cool marble. Her transformation had not erased her mortal scars. If anything, it amplified them, weaving her past abandonments, the empty hearths of her village, the lovers who fled her fragility, into a philosophical tapestry of suffering's exquisite beauty. Was this love her redemption? A light piercing the immortal shadows, or the ultimate curse, binding her to a cycle of violence that echoed her human disillusions? She touched the lockets, their chain cool and unyielding against her collarbone, grounding her as the coven silhouettes materialized beyond the tree line, pale figures cloaked in black velvet that absorbed the dying light. Lyrian moved like liquid shadow along the perimeter, her Dhampir grace a whisper amid the gathering gloom, scouting with the precision of one who had danced this deadly waltz for centuries. She returned to Elias's ear, her voice a silken thread laced with urgency. They number 20 at least, led by Vesper himself, the elder whose betrayal severed our old truce. He covets the lockets to unmake the werewolf bloodlines, twisting the crystal vein into a font of domination that would force a new eternity under vampire sway. His ambition reeks of the same guilt that haunts you, Alpha, the fear of fading into obscurity. Lyrian's words carried the full weight of her own traumas, etched into her ethereal features. The rejection by her vampire sire, who deemed her blood too diluted for true kinship, the slaying of her human mother by torch-wielding mobs, and the solitary wanderings through mist-shrouded ruins that had defined her existence. Her desires for Elias, once a fierce romantic tether born of shared guilt-ridden nights, had evolved into a redemptive guardianship. She no longer sought possession, but alliance, her ethical solitude yielding to the greater light of their collective survival. In her eyes, crimson flecked with restrained hunger, flickered a tragic acknowledgement. Every immortal was once someone who chose not to die, and she had chosen for love's shadow, only to find redemption in release. The battle erupted without preamble, a supernatural fury that shattered the eclipse's fragile peace. Vampires surged forward, their movements a blur of preternatural speed, fangs bared in rictus grins that gleamed like polished ivory under the corona's fire. The air filled with the wet, tearing sounds of claws rending undead flesh, the acrid sizzle of silver-tipped blades meeting cold skin, and the ragged symphony of breaths, human, lupine, vampiric, interwoven like a tragic opera. Elias fought like a tempest unleashed, his partial shift granting him claws that curved like scythes, furred arms sweeping through the fray to shield Alara as she advanced toward the glen's edge, visible from the chapel's elevated rise. The ground beneath them churned into muddied chaos, textures assaulting every sense, the slick slide of blood-smeared earth, the brittle crack of bones under impact, and the faint, floral whisper of wild roses crushed underfoot, their petals scattering like crimson confetti in the half-light. Amid the melee, introspection pierced Elias's focus like shards of moonlight through storm clouds. He parried a vampire's lunge, the impact jarring up his arm, and in that breath reflected on the moon's ancient pact that had birthed his immortality. The night his clan fell to silver arrows, his choice to endure not as heroism, but as eternal penance. Guilt, his constant companion, twisted deeper. How many more must suffer for his unyielding vigilance? Alara, dodging a claw swipe with Dhampir agility she was only beginning to master, felt death's invisible presence more acutely now, not as the fever's looming end, but as an eternal companion urging her toward the full embrace of transformation. Her mind raced with philosophical depth. The beauty of human suffering lay in its transience, a fleeting spark that immortals like Elias envied. Yet her choice to join him promised a shared eternity where pain could be alchemized into something transcendent, love's redemption forged in the crucible of shadow. Revelation struck like lightning in the heart of the fray. Vesper, the coven's elder, a gaunt figure with scars mirroring Elias's own from their long-ago alliance, lunged through the press, his eyes burning with fanatic zeal. He seized Elias by the throat, fangs inches from flesh, and hissed words that cut deeper than any blade. "Your guilt blinds you, old friend. That letter in the snow? My forgery, bait to draw you into fracture. She'll wither in your shadow. As all have before, your first mate, your betrayed beta, even the Dhampir, who pines in silence. Eternity is no covenant, it's isolation's throne." The confession hung in the air, a poisonous mist, revealing Vesper's deeper motive, not mere conquest, but a twisted redemption for his own fall from grace, ambition born of the fear that his vampiric line would fade without dominance. Alara intervened with a cry that echoed through the chapel ruins, the twin lockets flaring to life in her grasp, their combined energy channeling toward the distant crystal vein in the glen. She thrust them forward, a beam of silver light erupting from the symbols, drawing Vesper's essence into an involuntary rite of absorption. The elder convulsed, his form unraveling like smoke in wind. Ancient power siphoned not into destruction, but purification. His malice transmuted, crumbling him to ash that scattered on the eclipse's breaking edge. The coven faltered in the wake, their unity shattered, Lyrian dispatching the last stragglers with lethal precision, her dagger a silver arc that left only echoes of screams. Victorious, yet profoundly scarred, the survivors retreated to the chapel's altar, the returning sunlight filtering through fractured stained glass in shards of crimson, indigo, and gold, painting their bloodied forms in a mosaic of hard-won dawn. Alara and Elias shared a moment of profound, quiet intimacy, their hands entwining amid the settling dust, the locket's glow fading to a steady, warming pulse against her skin. The textures of aftermath enveloped them, the cooling slick of sweat on brows, the faint metallic aftertaste of exertion, and the soft, reassuring rhythm of breaths sinking in unison. "We've chosen eternity," she whispered, her voice a poetic caress laced with the tragedy of costs paid, but at love's razor edge, redemption in our shared light, or the endless night of curses unyielding. Elias drew her close, his touch a vow unspoken, ethical restraint giving way to inevitable connection, their forms silhouetted against the rising sun. Lyrian lingered at the periphery, her wounds superficial, but her spirit marked by the night's toll, a tragic smile curving her lips as she inclined her head in farewell. The shadows recede for now. Guard what you've forged. She vanished into the mist-shrouded tree line, her solitary path reaffirmed yet lightened by alliance. But as fragile peace settled over the chapel, Ilara's gaze fell upon a faint inscription newly revealed on the altar stone, etched by the locket's flare, a warning in archaic script of a deeper curse unbound, stirring ancient entities from abyssal slumbers, primordial rivals to both werewolf and vampire kin, awakened by the rite's resonance. The ethical dilemma peaked in that revelation, a fracture in their triumph. Sever the fused bond of the lockets to contain the threat and save their souls from further entanglement, or embrace the unknown maelstrom for the transcendent fire of love's unbreaking covenant. The sun climbed higher, its warmth a deceptive balm, leaving them poised on the precipice, hearts entwined in the eternal dance of choice. Dawn's first blush kissed the chapel stones with tentative warmth, banishing the eclipse's lingering void, yet leaving crescents of shadow etched into the crevices where choices had carved their permanent, indelible mark upon the soul. The pack dispersed into the misty morning, their forms weaving through the glen like ghosts retreating to lair, tending to wounds with salves of silverleaf and murmuring prayers to the moon's receding influence. The air in the chapel carried the fresh, cleansing scent of dew-kissed earth and wild roses, their petals now scattered across the threshold like offerings from the night's reluctant mercy, textures soft and fragile underfoot, a poignant reminder of beauty born from chaos. Ilara lingered at the altar with Elias, the twin lockets fused into a singular emblem by the ritual's fervor, its surface bearing the patina of battles endured, faint scratches from claws, a subtle warmth infused by her damper essence, and the recurring crescent moon engraving that now seemed to breathe with their shared pulse. Her transformation felt achingly complete, the chronic fever's insidious grip exorcised like a banished specter, leaving in its wake a vitality that hummed through her veins, sharpened senses drinking in the world's details, the subtle crackle of embers dying in the brazier, the distant, mournful call of a lone wolf echoing across the hills, and the intimate, earthy musk of Elias's nearness, stirring desires that had slumbered in her mortal fragility. Yet eternity's weight settled upon her like a velvet shroud, heavy with the curse of outliving fleeting joys, the lovers who had abandoned her bedside, the village hearths grown cold in her youth's plague-ravaged wake. Now, as Dhampir, those traumas transmuted into a profound philosophical lens. Suffering's beauty lay not in endurance alone, but in its capacity to forge connections that defied the void, love as the alchemical fire turning curse into covenant. She traced the fused locket with fingertips still trembling from the battle's adrenaline, its chain a cool anchor against the heat rising in her chest. Elias watched her, his obsidian eyes, deep pools reflecting centuries of solitary vigil, holding a compassion tempered by guilt, his own traumas resurfacing in the quiet. The clan battle where the moon's pact spared him alone. The first mate's dying whispers haunting his dreams and the ethical restraint that had isolated him, rationalizing every resisted bond as mercy to the vulnerable. The inscription's warning from the altar stone loomed in their minds, its archaic script glowing faintly in the morning light. The locket's unbound rite awakens the primordials, eternal watchers who slumber beyond blood and claw, jealous of choices that mimic their own undying vigil. Whispers of their approach rustled through the chapel's overgrown garden, carried on a breeze that tugged at the rose's thorns, petals falling in a slow cascade like bloodied snow, each one a sensory evocation of fragility amid immortality. Lyrian's parting note, discovered tucked into the crypt's alcove amid dust-moted beams of sunlight, added layers to the dread. Scrawled in her elegant, hurried hand on aged parchment that smelled of distant mists and faded ink, it read, "The true redemption lies in choice renewed, not in isolation's grip. The primordials are not mere foes, but echoes of our origins, immortals who, like you, Elias, opted not to die alone, only to become guardians of the veil. Guard the light you forged, or let it consume the shadows that bind you. Her words carried the full arc of her redemptive journey. From the Dhampir marked by rejection and guilt, wandering Carpathian ruins in search of purpose, to this moment of ethical release, her romantic tether to Elias, yielding to a broader alliance that eased her solitude. Elias drew Alara closer, his hand enveloping hers in a gesture both protective and intimate, the textures of their union profound, the calloused strength of his palm against her newly resilient skin, the faint tremor of shared vulnerability passing between them like a whispered secret. "We've transformed suffering into this fragile dawn," he murmured, his voice a poetic timbre, somber yet laced with the intimacy of one who had long conversed with shadows. The chapel's sensory world enveloped them, sunlight filtering through fractured stained glass to cast ruby and indigo flecks across their forms, dancing like captured fireflies, the soft groan of ancient timbers settling in the warmth, and the philosophical undercurrent of memory as both chain and compass, binding them to past losses while illuminating paths forward. Introspection wove through his words, drawing from the core truth. Every immortal was once someone who chose not to die, and in Alara's rebirth he saw his own pact reflected, not as solitary burden, but as invitation to shared transcendence. She leaned into his embrace, the pull between them no longer a resisted tide, but an inevitable current, mature and sensual in its depth, like the slow caress of moonlight on exposed skin, tragic yet redemptive, evoking the Gothic intimacy of ruins where hearts dared to beat eternal. Her past disillusions fueled this moment, the plague's isolation, the rationalized abandonments by those who feared her breaking, now alchemized into a fierce desire for visibility in his gaze, to be cherished not despite her scars, but through them. "Love as redemption and curse entwined," she replied, her tone compassionate and shadowed, eyes meeting his with a luminosity born of choice. "I'd walk this path again, for the beauty in our shared shadows, the way pain carves space for light to endure." Their lips brushed in a quiet vow, unhurried and profound, the air humming with the subtle sounds of their sinking breaths and the chapel's phantom echoes, distant bells tolling like affirmations from the ether. A revelation unfolded in that sacred hush, as Alara and Elias returned to the glen's pool under the climbing sun, the water now serene and mirror-clear, its crystal vein below humming with the purified resonance of their rite. Immersing the fused locket into the depths, they invoked a counter-ritual drawn from Lyrian's lore, words chanted in the ancient tongue of the Watchers, their voices intertwining like vines over stone. The surface rippled outward, waves of silver light spreading like ripples of forgiveness, drawing ethereal forms from the mists, not ravening entities, but spectral echoes of primordial immortals, figures cloaked in luminous veils, their faces bearing the weariness of eons, guardians who had chosen eternity in isolation and now sought the warmth of alliance. The primordials were not invaders, but kindred, awakened to witness the transcendence of love over curse. Their presence a philosophical affirmation, redemption through connection, the beauty of suffering humanized even in undying forms. Lyrian re-emerged from the tree line, called by the light's beacon, her form graceful and unburdened, joining them at the pool's edge to form a triad of eternal guardianship. Werewolf Alpha, reborn Dhampir, and wandering half-blood, united against the veil's encroaching voids. The chapel filled with a soft, harmonious luminescence, sounds weaving a tapestry of renewal. The gentle lap of water on stone, the harmonious winds carrying scents of blooming nightshade and fresh earth, and the steady beat of hearts, Pack, Dhampir, and spectral, pulsing in unison. Death retreated into invisibility, honored as the silent architect of choices made, while life's textures bloomed anew. The warm embrace of sun on skin, the brush of lips in reaffirmed vows, the subtle glow of the locket now resting between them, a beacon of covenants forged. The ultimate ethical dilemma resolved not in severance, but in bold embrace. They chose transcendence over isolation, love's illuminating fire to pierce the eternal night, transforming potential curse into a legacy of light. As the sun crested fully, bathing the ruins in golden old and crimson depths, their story whispered onward through the world's vast weave, immortals who turned the damned's mercy into resurrection, shadows yielding to the everlasting crescent of hope. Subscribe if you believe mercy can resurrect even the damned.